So on January 2nd, 1935, a man by the name of Roland T Ownes checked into Hotel President in Missouri, Kansas. He was described by staff as being well dressed, wearing an overcoat. He didn't have any bags with him, and the bellboy noted that he had only brought a toothbrush, toothpaste and a comb. He was also described as having cauliflower ear and a big scar on the side of his head, so a lot of the staff just assumed he was some sort of wrestler or fighter or something like that, and his real name was discovered to be Artemis Ogletree. The next interaction that Ogletree had with the staff was with Mary Soptic. Mary Soptic was the maid that was working the afternoon shift. She went to room number 1046 where Ogletree was staying just to give it a clean and to give him some fresh towels. Ogletree was sitting on the bed. She noted that the curtains were drawn and that the lamps were very dimly lit, which was a common occurrence with her interactions with Ogletree from that point on. Ogletree asked Mary to keep the door unlocked as he had friends coming over, and he left the room. Now later on that day at 4 p.m, Mary went back to do her rounds in room 1046, again just to give it a clean and a checkup. She would find Ogletree sitting on the bed fully dressed, again the room very poorly lit with the curtains drawn. She noticed that there was a note written on the nightstand beside Ogletree that stated, "Don, I will be back in 15 minutes, wait." The next day on January 3rd, Mary would go back to the room to do her duties. Now when she went into the room, she noticed that again the curtains were still drawn. The phone did ring, to which Ogletree answered, and the conversation went as follows: "No, Don, I don't want to eat. I'm not hungry. I just had breakfast. No, I am not hungry." At 4 p.m, she went back to the room and noticed that the door was locked. She could hear some voices talking from inside, but she couldn't really make out the muffled sound. She knocked on the door, to which a man with a deep voice replied, "What do you want?" She then explained that she was the maid and that she had some fresh towels for the room. The man then responded saying that "we don't need any." Now Mary thought this was very strange because she knew for a fact that they did need fresh towels. She also didn't recognise the man's voice, and a statement she left with the police later on would state that this man did not sound like Ogletree. So clearly there was someone else in the room with Ogletree. So on January 4th there'd be a lot more interactions between staff and Ogletree. The operator worked in the hotel and noted to staff that the phone in room 1046 was off the hook. So bellboy by the name of Probst, who had dealt with Ogletree when he first arrived into the hotel, went up to the room. He also noted as well that there was a sign on the doorknob that stated "Do not disturb." He knocked on the door, to which he was told to come in by Ogletree, but he couldn't get in because the door was locked. He just shouted through the door at Ogletree to put the phone back on the hook. At approximately 8:30 a.m, another bellboy was sent up by the name of Pike. Now Pike at this point noted that the "Do not disturb" sign was still on the door, so this time instead of knocking he let himself in. When Pike went into the room, it was still poorly lit, and he noted that Ogletree was naked and appeared to be drunk. He didn't really give much attention to Ogletree. Instead he went straight to the phone and back on the hook and left the room. So at approximately 10:30 a.m, the phone again was taken off the hook, so Probst, the other bellboy, went back up to the room and let himself in. When he went into the room, he noticed that Ogletree was on his elbow and knees, and his head was clearly bloodied. He turned on the light and noticed that the phone was also off the hook and there was blood on the walls. In a state of panic, Probst ran down to get the assistant manager, who then came up to the room. It took them a while to get back in because Ogletree had fell over and was blocking the door, so it took a bit of coaxing from them to get Ogletree to move. So once the assistant manager was able to get access to the room, he contacted the police, who would arrive with a doctor by the name of Dr. Flanders. Dr. Flanders did talk to Ogletree and noted that Ogletree had various stab wounds, one above the heart in the chest, and ones that also punctured his lungs. He also had a skull fracture, which was clear from being hit with something. Now he was also found as well being with cords around his wrists, and he also had cords around his throat and his ankles. So again, this would clearly suggest that this man was not on his own. Now they did ask Ogletree what happened. Ogletree stated that nobody had did this to him and that he slipped and hit his head in the bathtub, but that was not consistent with the injuries he had. Now unfortunately that was all the information they were able to get out of Ogletree. He would then pass out and slip into a coma, to which he would never awaken, and would eventually die in hospital after midnight on January 5th. Evidence that was found in the room was as follows: a hairpin, a safety pin, an unsmoked cigarette, and diluted sulfuric acid. They also noticed that there was fingerprints found on the phone, which is small enough to be a woman's. Now forensically speaking, the science wasn't really there. They couldn't test the fingerprints against anything. And at this point, they actually didn't know who this man was. It wasn't until months of publishing photos and sketches of the man in the media that a woman by the name of Ruby Ogletree would come up, suggesting that he was possibly her son. Now, he did have some features that we mentioned at the start of the video, like the big scar on the side of his head and the cauliflower ears. So you would have thought that he would have been an easy person for someone to find. But it wasn't until later on that Ruby noticed in the paper that he looked a lot like her son. Now, her son's name was Artemis Ogletree, who was actually traveling around America, hitchhiking, etc. So the weird thing with Ruby was that she was actually still receiving correspondence from someone that was claiming to be Ogletree. Now, she didn't note to the police that, the way the letters were written and how they were written didn't really correspond with the way Ogletree did, so she thought that was kind of strange. The letters also claimed that he had moved to Cairo in Egypt and found love, but that was quickly debunked by police when they got in touch with the authorities over there, and they were able to confirm that no one with that name was living in Cairo. In 1937, there was a man by the name of Joseph Martin who was the prime suspect for the murder of Ogletree. The reason why this man was the prime suspect was because he actually had murdered someone in a hotel room and tried to hide the body in the trunk of his car. But the other thing that was interesting about it was that he used the name Donald Kelso as his alias for checking into hotels. The reason this is important is because if you remember earlier in the video, Ogletree had been overheard by staff talking to someone by the name of Don. Police were actually able to match the handwriting from Mr. Martin to the handwriting to the letters that was sent to Ogletree's mother, Ruby. Now, Mr. Martin was never actually charged for the murder of Ogletree. Even though there was some circumstantial evidence, he was charged for the murder. He did actually was proven to commit and did go to prison. Now, over the next few years into the 1950s, the case would be kind of ignored and then re-looked at by detectives, but they weren't really getting anywhere. I think the most plausible theory was the one that I mentioned, which was about Joseph Martin, who was convicted of murdering someone in a hotel room not long after Ogletree was murdered himself. The fact that he used the alias Donald Kelso did not really help him in his favour, considering that Ogletree had been heard stating the name Don by the staff in the hotel. So it seems very plausible that perhaps these two had a run-in, and Mr. Martin decided to seek some sort of a vengeance on Ogletree for whatever reason. We don't really know why or what kind of caused any sort of altercation. Now, again, the physical evidence doesn't really kind of go in favour of Mr. Martin actually being the suspect, but the fact that Mr. Martin had killed someone in the hotel room, and also the fact that the handwriting he had matched the handwriting from the letters that Ruby received from someone claiming to be Ogletree and then claiming to be a friend of Ogletree's. So when you put all those kind of pieces together, it is all very circumstantial, but it would be the most plausible. I think the theory that he fell and hit his head, like that, as Ogletree stated before he died, just doesn't match at all. It's just not possible, really. Another theory was that there was actually a local prostitute that used to kind of frequent the hotel, and she would frequent different floors, and she was there the nights that Ogletree was there. So one theory is that maybe perhaps Ogletree got into some sort of argument with this woman, and for whatever reason he was murdered by perhaps a pimp or someone like that who maybe didn't pay the money. Now, again, not very kind of high-end theory. It doesn't really kind of add up, and again, it's all circumstantial. This is just based off witness statements and things like that. There's no real physical evidence, and to this day, even with those theories, I can't say for sure that happened. So, Ogletree was definitely someone that was kind of unlucky, and some of the interactions he had with the staff was kind of strange. But at the same time, we're only getting these little snippets of interactions, so we don't really know what was going on outside of those interactions. I mean, and we probably never will. But it was certainly very strange, like the way he was found. And there's no physical evidence that kind of points one person to the murder. But one thing we know for sure is that he was definitely murdered, and it's definitely one that's not going to be solved. Even nearly 100 years later, we still don't know. There you go. There's another murder mystery for you all. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, I appreciate anyone that takes the time to watch these videos. It is very much appreciated. And if you do please do share, please do subscribe. It does help the channel, and it's always very much appreciated. So thanks guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.